Hello, everybody. It is another men liking stuff. The Claire Obscure chat went so well that I decided to torture myself and do something massive for the next one. We are talking Warhammer 40K. And as you notice, it is the League of Extraordinary Beards for this panel. Perhaps no surprise, but we've got James Grim Desborough of Portsmouth Studios. God, I can't speak. Back, you'll recognize him from the Claire Obscure discussion. And we've got Matthew, Stephen, and Jan Helge joining us. So we're going to go around real quick, guys, before I plug Jan Helge's excellent book, Ismark the Mark Boy. Read it. If you're a fan of Warhammer 40K, there's a lot in it that is crossover. But we'll start with you, Grim, because you're the returning veteran doing this all of once. Natty Hat, why do you love Warhammer 40K?
Right. Well, for me, I think I like it because to me, it is a British success story that never really compromised entirely on its Britishness. It retains its dark sense of humor, sort of rooting for the little guy in a weird way, despite the way it's developed. It still has that kind of Python-esque, scrappy sort of attitude to it, which I think characterizes the best in British media and British games, particularly. So for me, that's it. It's the little game that could.
All right. Let's continue on the British theme. We'll jump over to Matthew, who is the reason I played Blood, Shooters, and Teeth. Matthew, why do you love Warhammer 40K?
For me, it's always been more recently anyway, it's the complexity of it. So you have this huge expansive universe and it's got multiple layers to it. So you can really take it at whatever level you want. Like when I was much younger, as a teenager, or whatever, when I first found it, it's cool. It's Space Marines. It's big shooty guns and monsters, and that's it really. But there's you get more layers to it, and you can see like the details that they put into the books and the historical elements they put into it, and the relationship and actual the more complex aspects of it. And a lot of like the Siege of Terror stuff, you get lots of mythology brought into it, and so you can really go as deep into it as you want. So it can be really shallow and silly and meaningless, or it can be really in depth, and that's something I enjoy.
All right. Stephen, why do you love Warhammer 40K from the other side of the pond?
So I really like it because it really has something for everybody, I think, in ways that other franchises don't. I mean, you want the story about the horrors of war, pick up a guard novel. You want these big epic things, start reading Horus Heresy. You want some cyberpunk, play some Necromunda or Hired Gun or something on the PC. So there's like just a little bit of everything for everyone. So it's very pick and choose. And, if you don't like one aspect of the franchise, there's probably something else out there for you. So that's what I really enjoy about it.
Yeah, you can talk to five Warhammer fans, Warhammer 40K fans, and find no overlap between what they're interested in. This group had a lot of overlap. I'm like, okay, that's nice because it's so vast. Jan Helge, why do you love Warhammer 40K?
Well, I'm just gonna overlap everyone. Not being a plastic crack addict, I'm in it for the lore. Uh, but I do love some of the stuff that people make as far as miniatures and so on. And I do have a couple of the McFarlane toys, um, Space Marines, and it's especially for me. It's the simplicity of the complexity. If you understand me, that the on the surface level, it's very sort of this this side against the other side, and it's sort of good versus evil type of shit. But it's also there aren't any good guys in Warhammer, and that I think that's more what I love the type of heroism in um, in small doses as far as the individual in a very shitty system is. And I
Yeah.
also love, I absolutely love the humor. I'm a huge orc fan, so I love the sort of Monty Python type of humor. Growing up in Norway, you sort of you had a choice: either American sitcoms or old Monty Python shows or movies. And I'm a nerd, so I went Monty Python all the way.
Nice. Okay. And yeah, I mean, that whole idea of morality, what does it mean to be a good follower of Slaanesh or Nurgle or a good orc? You know, the morality of the different factions. The world building is spectacular. And that's the thing that a lot of other properties have shamelessly swiped. There would be no Mass Effect or even Dragon Age without Warhammer. There would be no Gears of War without Warhammer 40K. And the people who make this stuff are open about the influence that Warhammer 40K has had on them. But it started, I want to get into the history for people that sort of have that stigma against Warhammer because they just see Space Marines and don't realize that it does have that very very intense world building, uh a lot of humor, and Sanguinius Abishi painted by Michelangelo. So where did it start? Matthew, we'll go over to you because you started talking about this before we started recording. Grim, you're also very knowledgeable about this. So I want to start there. For people who don't know, where did all this power armor and various and sundry other things, Tyranids, come from?
Well, well, I'm no expert in this sort of stuff, but basically, in the 80s, Games Workshop got exclusive license to distribute Dungeons and Dragons. I think the whole of Europe, but maybe just UK. Uh, they made money off that. They developed the Warhammer Fantasy tabletop game, and 40K, or in the first edition, Rogue Trader, as it was called, was a sci-fi adaptation of that. Um, then it became, well, it was Angus, was it Space Marine Rogue Trader? Anyway, it became 40K from the second edition onwards, I think. And what we're on ninth or 10th now, I think. But
What, ninth or 10th edition
10th.
I think we're up to that
Tenth.
now. 10th, yeah.
in the games?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Wow.
Return of the Lion was the 10th edition.
Yeah.
Wow.
There we go.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
so
go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say most of the lore came through codexes and rulebooks for the tabletop game. The first novel was published in 1990, I believe, and they've now got. Actually, I've lost count because I stopped recording it, but there was well over 750 books when I last counted. So yeah, it's a large property.
Yeah, how many books is the Horus Heresy alone?
54.
56.
Yeah, 56.
I put Matthew on the spot there. He pulled that out of the top of his head. So good
I,
going.
I've
told
always been
Grim.
convinced that it's 54, but you may not be may not be counting Battle for the Abyss. So
Yeah.
Yeah, but I told Grim we were going to talk about history, but I went to Matthew because he started talking about it before we started recording. So Grim, piggyback on what Matthew said, because you're a game designer, right? So
Yes.
you have an inside idea of what it takes to build something of this scope. So
Yes.
how did 40K get going?
Oh, I will try to be concise. Um, the 70s was a really rich period for fantasy and science fiction and prog rock
Yep.
and fantasy art. And all of that in Britain kind of made this big soup out of which we got a whole bunch of comic book writers and artists, and we got a lot of game designers and so on as well. That first edition of Warhammer is very, very obviously heavily influenced by the anthology comic 2000 AD, which has been published in Britain since 76, I think. Um, you're going through the book, you can see all the influence all the way through it. Nemesis the Warlock, Judge Dredd, ABC Warriors, um, loads. Yeah, and they were building off their previous Warhammer Fantasy. So you mix all that together and you transpose that into this future world. And then they're also drawing on things like Dune, which was very popular with the prog rock and yeah, fantasy crowd as well. The Moorcockian influence, Law and Chaos, all of that is obviously huge. And it's a joyful, crazy blend of all of that stuff in that first edition. Strontium Dog as well, also from the comic. Um, and they just kind of threw everything at the wall, I think, and saw what stuck. And then gradually over the later editions, it's become more refined. But for me, as a really sort of long-term fan of 2000 AD, to me, I can't help but constantly see its influence in there, and particularly the influence of Pat Mills, who you might know from martial law. Metalzoic was popular on the other side of the pond. I think he worked on that as well. He helped create Slain. Um, I bring him up because if we're going to get into some of the sort of politics and social side of it, he's also an important figure, and
Yeah.
because he was so influential on Warhammer, I think that's important. Um, so for me, that's what it is. It is this soup of influences, but these are things that had been kind of on the boil in British
Yeah.
underground
Oh yeah.
nerd culture for about 20 years by the
Yeah,
time
yeah.
it all came out. Starting in the 60s, really, but the 70s is when it really impacts.
It's
And
funny, I didn't think of the Britishness until you brought it up, but it's true. Like, the Hive Planets as a commentary on industrialization is a particularly British spin, and absolutely 2000 AD is, I
yeah,
definitely see the connection. Yeah,
yeah.
spot on that one. Is there anything else you want to add? I interrupted you there, sorry.
Uh, no, I think that's it. I mean, not to touch on the politics early, but 2000 AD is or was also such a subversive
Uh-huh.
comic and anti-authoritarian
Yeah.
comic, and that runs like a fat vein of precious ore right through the middle of the original 40K, certainly.
Yeah. And this is actually a good segue into the reputation that it sort of has externally. I mean, the number of female spaces or female coded spaces where discussions of Warhammer 40K are just sort of banned is very interesting to me. They see sort of the grimacing space marine or the heretic and don't go beyond that. And to me, it's like, no, that's the whole play it straight to be goofy about it. I mean, if you've ever played any of the games, it gets stupid fast. I mean, Jan Helge and I ended up with a tech squirrel, with a bionic squirrel
Yeah.
in a campaign that we were a part of because we were doofuses with a grenade launcher who'd never seen trees before. So, Jan Helge, where do you think that this reputation came from? And how is sort of an insider perspective different from what people on the outside may think of it?
Well, I think a lot of it stems from the sort of 70s and 80s nerd culture bad rap that and 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 when you on just throw on top all the adult subject matter that the lore actually has within it, the sort of, I mean, if you read what some of the, especially Honsu, do to other members of the human race, and or just read what the Mechanicus do, or the towards other member of the human race when they make servitors, it is kind of understandable that uh, such a violent and dark world, when people just look at it surface level, would get a bad rap, would get so it's, I mean, those of us who kind of lived through the 80s know what it was like growing up as a nerd at that time. So it's it's I think it's sort of a late bloomer when it comes to mainstream success, but I do believe with the whole Henry Cavill TV series coming now, it's going to get more mainstream. But I do worry about sort of toning down the almost said the best parts of 40K, but it's it's the darkness, it's it's the brutality, it's the bleakness. But if you just get past that, you find a world where there's more hope
Yeah.
than in your average romantasy novel.
Oh,
So
that's quite a comparison and apt. Okay, so Stephen, yeah, I mean, you've seen the nerfing of some of the elements of Dune in the new movies that kind of ended up in 40K. You know, if they nerf the psychers, we got a bit of a problem with this world. But so Stephen, toying on that sort of, there's going to be a bunch of people coming into extended media fairly soon. What do you want people to know about 40K? Like, why do you love it?
Well, I think I want people to know that like it's a little bit more than what like the surface level is, right? Like we've been talking about how it's grimdark, you know, you have these really ridiculously over the top things. And I think a lot of new people are going to not realize it's kind of meant to be goofy and crosses the line twice, you know, where instead of having like an autoloader for this giant spaceship that loads these giant shells, we have like a family that's all they do, and they have hundreds of them and they pick it up by hand and they load it, and it's ridiculous and silly, and it's meant to be, you know, it's not meant to be taken seriously. And I think what we're going to happen is when you same thing with like video games or other things, that the tropes that are normal to fans of it are going to be thought of as like evil bad, right? Yeah, you see that a lot in like video games. And when we had the more popularized video games coming in like the early 2000s with Halo and, you know, the massive amounts of sports games and stuff, you had a bunch of people who really never played video games, really never got into it. And then now, like, well, this thing's bad because, you know, it shows whatever. And
Yeah, Halo's an example. The Flood, I saw Warhammer 40K
oh,
right
yeah,
away. Yeah.
definitely.
I mean, the
Definitely.
Rachni and Mass Effect are essentially the
I
Tyranids.
mean,
Yeah.
anything from like Bungie was doing Marathon, Pathways in the Darkness was very inspired by 40K, you know, the
Hmm.
working caricatures and all them. Um, but but you're gonna have like I think to appeal to that mass market, you're gonna have a toning down of stuff because, you know, what nerds really like and what, you know, normal non-nerds like. I don't want to call them normies. I kind of find that a little bit insulting, but yeah, normies, right? What they like is a lot different, you know. I mean, but I think also there might be people who get it. I mean, look at Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was extremely violent, extremely
Hmm.
dark. It's probably about as violent and dark as 40K is, but um, you know, you had the mass market kind of embrace it, you know, in a way that I think other things didn't. So maybe, you know, maybe the Henry Cavill, the Amazon thing, if it actually ever goes through, I haven't heard too much news about it other than yes, it's happening still. You know, will have the same effect of Game of Thrones, where it becomes this kind of like must-watch TV. You know,
Hmm. And Helge, you got your hand up. What's up?
yeah, I just wanted to comment because he I started to think about the Monty Python Yorkshireman sketch being recreated among a gang of loaders within some sort of Imperial ship. That would actually work.
Dead
They
parrot
don't know
sketches
how
work.
rough they have it.
With no
Yeah.
legs and
Yeah,
carrying a
I can't
down
believe I
shell.
didn't see the Python-esque elements until Grimm said it. But let's, speaking of Grimm, like Warhammer 40K. Oh, this is such a segue. Go me. The grimdark, like 40K is the king of the grimdark. And I do agree that that's sort of, the theme they set so that you can do not just crazy, silly stuff, but there's just a cool factor to something like the Emperor, who's just so steeped in myth. There's something cool to a character like Angron, right? So, Stephen, since you're like wearing a Windrose shirt and
Yeah,
you're so smiley, um, let's go into the grimdark, unless you have something to add to the last thing, because I want
no,
to
actually, I
talk
was going to
about.
talk
Yeah, go
about that.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Um, so yeah, I think the Grimdark, I mean, it's all for rule of cool, right? Why do we have a chain axe? Because
Because it's
chainsaws and
cool.
axes are awesome. So if you put them together, it's going to be even more awesome, right? It doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense. They're so like even as inefficient as the Imperium is, like you would think they would have more efficient things, and like the family of loaders that grab a artillery shell and load it into a thing, and that's their entire job, and that's their entire life. And yeah, like the grim dark is just in service of the rule of cool. I think I think it's just one of those things that I'm trying to find the right words for it, but like it's so over the top and so ridiculous that it kind of circles back around to being really awesome in a really darkly funny way.
To me, and Matthew, I'm going to throw over to you because I mean, you've told me a lot about the finer details of the lore points. They did go rule of cool, but then they bothered to go all in on it, right? They just embraced, some of the genetic engineering of the Space
They
Marines, which is why people get upset about female Space Marines.
they
But
do. They
yeah,
Yeah, no, they go into incredible amounts of detail. I mean, obviously it's all science fiction, it's all nonsense ultimately, but
at least they
so
try.
well, they do. And so especially in addition to all the novels and the comics, which are like rocking our shit, and all the games and the short stories and the audio dramas that they do. They also have White Dwarf magazine, which they've been running for 30, 40 years now, which will have sections in it every every week, month, whenever it's published. I can't remember now. We'll just have details on little bits of kit and stats on and the explanation of how plasma cannon works and all this sort of stuff, which is in sort of excessive amounts of detail in which no one really wants or needs, but I guess it fills space or something. But yeah, so there is this really granular detail in 40K, which is almost unnecessary. I have seen there are communities of fans out there who do go into mind-numbingly boring details on the science of 40K. I remember reading effectively a blog once about the actual force impact of a bolter shell and working out based on real life comparisons on how much force it would impact and what the explosive ramp would be based on the published sort of details that they give on it. And so I mean, it's like I said earlier about the different layers of it you go into because you can look at the goofiness of it, the silliness that you get, and and look at uh the sort of politics of it and the allegories and all that sort of stuff. And you can also just say, or you can just stay in universe, and you can go into this insane granular detail, and it works both ways. It's yeah, so it's just what they do.
But it's a world, and I know we've talked about this, that I'm gonna go over to Grim after you. So Grim, you can think about how you want to add here. Um it, there's so much of like the really hardcore kind of heavy metal, that old zine, 80s zine culture thing of they go out of their way to strip humanity from people in absolutely insane ways. and yet the humanity creeps back in. And I think when we talk about that human condition, that's what that's really the core of it. Yeah, for me anyway. What is it for you?
It is. They kind of dial it up in different ways. So you can look at a character like Conrad Kurz, who does some of the gnarliest shit in 40K. Just look up his screaming hall
Yeah.
if you want to know. Um, but then when you actually see his interactions with his brothers throughout the Horus Heresy series, you can see this dripping insecurity in him and all sorts of other kind of issues he presents. And you can get the banality of the horror of it sometimes because, yeah, you can get people torn to shreds by packs of Tyranids, which is one level of horror. And then there's all, God, I can't remember where it's in now, but there is a part where you have a guy working in the administratum on Terra or something like that, and his entire job is just in this, never leaving this building and just typing in these numbers into this console from these big vellum rolls. And yeah, that's his thing. He has no idea why he's doing it or what he's doing it for, why, any of this sort of thing. And then, I mean, he does it wrong once, and then all of a sudden, like, an entire regiment of Militarum get dropped on in the completely wrong place and just fall into a sun or something like that. Yeah, and that's the sort of the banality of or the evil of bureaucracy and things like that kind of crop up like that in it time and time again. And you're talking about like this sort of technological issues like having all the technology for autoloaders, but using chain gangs to load the cannon in the spaceships and everything. But you kind of get nowhere near this extent, obviously, but you get the same thing. I mean, I served in the military in the 2000s, and I remember walking into one of the first officers in there, and yeah, it was still using fax machines. I had to learn how to use a fax machine because that's the sort of technology we're still using. It's you find
Fax machine,
lots of
luxury.
yeah, exactly. Uh, but you do get those sort of parallels in it, which is something I find enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, Grim, going over to you, kind of bordering from that. I wrote down three questions and I'm just going to pick one to ask you because you're a game guy. And
Hmm.
the way they set tone in Warhammer, just with naming conventions, right? Adepta sororitas, you automatically are transported to this lofty style thing where then you fuck around and find out. So, what does that? Because I know you believe really strongly in this stuff and not sort of embracing the chaos and not controlling in games what people can do. How does 40K function on that level by throwing all this massive stuff at the player?
I think with war games, it's different because they're much more ordered than role-playing games. You know, you take your turn, you do your actions in order. Rules have to be tight because it's more of a competitive game where
Right.
you're vying your armies against each other. So the wiggle room comes in that the universe is so vast, so old, so full of horrors and strangeness, and there are reasons that you can pit any army against another one. If you want Space Marines to fight Space Marines, you can say, oh, they're being corrupted, or it's early in the Horus Heresy. If you want Astra Militarum to fight another Astra Militarum, it can be, the Empire versus a planetary revolt or whatever. And you can find a reason to pit any faction against any other faction, and you can make up whole planets and sectors, and the world is just so vast that your creativity has room to exist and to flourish, even in a world that you can drill right down to, oh, he's using this pattern bolter from this era constructed on this planet, and so it's going to, you can go into that, but you don't have to. So it's got all that room. And what I think is really striking to me is that there are no heroes. I think that's important. Um, even the Eldar, they got so horny they destroyed their own people. And
Some would say that's
Gave birth
heroism.
to a god.
and half of them are just trying to hold it together, while the other half are capturing and torturing people to try and get past it. And the Imperium classically, they're at war with everything and everyone because they face an existential threat to their existence as a species. So if I want to get pretentious about it, for me, that is a meditation on how far do you go in response to that level of threat? What is justified? Is total control justified? Is the ignorance of the masses justified? Is the total militarization of an interstellar society to one goal of xenophobically wiping out everything anywhere near you? Is that justified in that circumstance? Um, and clearly the Imperium thinks it is. Even the Tau, even the
Yeah.
Tau, who are this new anime sort of tie-in faction, they started out looking like the good guys. A friend of mine painted up his Tau army in Soviet colors, which I thought was quite funny.
Wow. That's
Um,
cool.
And
and they kind of use mind control to take over other societies. So
Yeah.
even they're not good. So yeah, I love that about it.
And you predicted where I was going to go with Jon Helge because he first brought up the idea of there being no heroes, no real heroes. I mean, Rogue Trader, the game, the recent Owlcat PC game uses the language dogmatic, iconoclast, or heretical instead of, Paragon or Renegade with Mass Effect. The two of them are sort of, Mass Effect, you can play chaotic good or lawful good using the D&D parlance, but a true villain run isn't really possible in that game. Rogue Trader is the other way. At some point, you have to do something ick. So, Jan Helge, I want to start there. What's the appeal of there is heroism in Warhammer 40K stories, but no heroes.
Uh, I'm going to push back on that a little bit.
Okay.
I would say that there are heroes,
Hmm.
but there's no good guys or bad guys. I mean, there are bad. All of them are bad guys, and some of them are worse guys. Uh, Take for instance the. I mean the thing that pops into my head are the Slaaneshi cultists and the Emperor's children. They are, in my opinion, the worst, but I do find them fascinating, anyways. But the the appeal of it is that you get to see someone like Ibram Gaunt, for instance, trying to make the best of a really, really shitty situation. I mean, he starts out as a Arbites, as far as I can remember, and then he becomes a political officer in the form of a commissar, and then he has all the worst jobs you would think of in a totalitarian system if you have any sort of human decency left in your soul. But then he manages to sort of gradually use that to form this brotherhood within the Tanith for first and only. And he also lives with an enormous amount of guilt. You see
Uh-huh.
how it almost destroys him. So I think that there are heroes in really, really shitty systems.
Right.
In And the reason why there are those shitty systems is exactly what Grim mentioned.
Hmm.
That um, you have this idea that no matter who you're playing, you should be rooting for those you are playing. I mean, if you're crazy enough to pick word bearers, then yeah, you should play them like they're fanatical assholes, Bible thumping crazy people.
Mhm.
but still, you need to actually embrace that as a faction. And I mean, there is something understandable about every character's choice.
Right.
Even Lorgar. There's there there is a lot of, I mean, he gets driven to heresy basically because he's the eternal little brother who always wants to please everyone around him, and then when he gets the real sort of whoop ass from his father, then he loses all faith.
Yeah.
And the only person I would say is all bad is Erebus, which
Yeah.
everyone can agree with.
Everybody agrees. It's interesting because it is this sort of order versus chaos thing instead of good versus evil, right? I mean, the chaos guards are the warp and all that stuff. And the warp is sort of one of the most terrifying concepts in 40K for me, just because it is pure chaos. But there's a bit of a joke within 40K fandom that you're sort of submitting to the empire the minute you get in, to borrow Grimm's get pretentious thing. I think it goes back to the sort of ancient Greek and Roman, like the pre-modern writing idea of a hero. And the Primarchs are just these super powerful beings that embody states of being instead of them being the good guys. Like Hercules, they're all flawed. Thor in classical Norse mythology has flaws. But when you get into the Games Workshop ecosystem, you do have to sort of pick your poison as well. So, one of the
Yeah.
things that I hear from the whole love to hate stuff about it, Stephen, we'll start with you. For me, it's the cost of everything. I'll be, oh man, that's so cool. It's $300 for an oversized figure. What? So, what do you love to hate about Warhammer 40K?
So I think I was watching a video one time, and it wasn't directly about Warhammer 40K. It was about one of the video games, and someone described Games Workshop as being a company of that kid. And if you know what that kid is, right? It's the, well, my John Cena shoots out laser beams. Well, my Iron Man has an anti-laser beam deflector. And every single author, every single, codex writer, game designer, thing that works within Games Workshop, they kind of have their faction, their group, their team, and they really push that thing. And you kind of see that slide off a lot of the fans with, like, I don't know if anybody remembers the whole Grey Knight debacle where they murdered a bunch of Sisters of Battle and then painted themselves in their blood so they could go off and be protected by their purity. And, a lot of people are just like, this is just fan wankery, or, just my faction wankery. That really didn't resonate with the fan, but that's kind of what I love to hate about them, is that you have these people who are just like, this is my faction and they're the best and they're going to beat everyone else. Yay.
Yeah, and that's part of the appeal of it, right? Because the fun part is inner 8-year-olds smashing figures together. Matthew, I know you have some strong feelings about love to hate. So which one are you going to pick for the purpose of this discussion?
So for me, I don't know if this one will apply, but it's just more of a Games Workshop thing, in that they have an annoying habit of filing a lot of lore into battle books. So battle books are limited release books that will come out for a specific sort of campaign of the game, and there'll be about half game rules and half sort of compacted lore that's not in like it's not a novelization, but it's an overarching story that's awesome. And then those will come out. They're incredibly expensive because of the game players, and then they'll disappear and they'll never be seen again. And the lore's almost lost to history. It tends to crop back up in YouTube videos and people sort of putting it on Wikipedia and things like that, or the lexicon, I'm sure say. But it's so that's one of the things that annoys me, because it's like, okay, like, I don't play the game. Can you just do like can you not put out like a little booklet, an ebook maybe of just this, so I can get this sort of lore aspect as well? I don't have to spend fucking 20 odd quid or whatever it is for a single battle book in a series of four. Same thing we were talking about the Return of the Lion with the start of this current edition, and yeah, that was where actually we talked about the Arcs of Omen and this sort of the heretical plot, and this it ends up with the fact and all sorts of stuff and all that. Yeah, never come up again. We got a novelization of his return that had nothing to do with it and was just about him wandering around the forest and finding his lost sons, which was really good book, but still it was like, okay, can we sometimes. So that's if I had to pick one thing, that would be it. That's more of a Games Workshop complaint than a story complaint, really.
I think it counts. Grim.
1990. So Games Workshop, again, it's more of a whinge about them, but it ties into 40K because it is the runaway success of 40K that changed everything. But 1990, White Dwarf 100, Games Workshop, which had stores in practically every high street in the country, sold role-playing games, board games, not just Warhammer, other miniatures, all kinds. It was a general hobby shop, and it was great. 1990, they just seemed to decide off the back of massive success, mostly of 40K, that we're not going to do that anymore. And overnight, every single store just started only selling Games Workshop and Citadel miniatures stuff and nothing else. Now, I picked up a lot of good stuff in the sales when they were clearing their stock, but yeah, ever since it was just Games Workshop stuff. And White Dwarf went from being a general sort of hobby magazine to a catalogue. So I wrote to them actually and complained about this, and they sent me back a really, really snotty letter saying, "Well, we don't care what you and the other fans think. This is. I wish I still had it. I would. It was really snotty, really unprofessional, but they were right. I was proved wrong. This was the smart move. It might have been terrible for the hobby as a whole, but for them and for Warhammer and for the bottom line and the shareholders, I guess it was the right thing. So they shut me up, I guess, in the intervening, 30 years? Oh.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. Jan Helge, I'm going to get you to give your love to hate. And then, guys, we're going to go around starting with Jan Helge. Your 3 to 5 favorite characters. I won't ask you to pick just one. So, Jan Helge, love to hate, and then your favorite characters from Warhammer 40K to close.
Okay, this is. I'm starting to sense a theme because this is another Games Workshop complaint, and Oh, I automatically raised my hand. I didn't mean to do that.
I thought I did that. It was you. Okay, like I see
Yeah.
a hand. Oh God, I was gesturing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm gonna the Games Workshop thing is the unnecessary scarcity because they especially on the book side, they have no fucking excuse not to have every book of the Horus Heresy in print. It is horrendous that I can't complete that series at all. Maybe they'll reprint the books as the TV series starts up, but the thing is as well that they have a huge problem with scalpers, or had a huge problem with scalpers when it comes to the limited edition stuff. I can understand the sort of limited edition stuff. I have a couple of limited edition things from there myself, but it's the general books, the general paperbacks. I don't get why they can't sort of have them in print.
Right.
So, and when it comes to characters, I'm going to say that there's of course Caiaphas Cain, who's the almost obligatory commissar everyone loves, even though he doesn't love himself, uh, or he loves himself too much. I don't know, but it's Caiaphas Cain, Ibram Gaunt, of course. Uh, I'm going to mention a lot of commissars because Sebastian Yorick as well. And other than that, I mean, I do love some of the Primarchs, but there's also like there's a couple of characters from the Horus Heresy, like Gabriel Loken and Mercedes Olaton, that are really interesting characters that keep on reappearing in several books in the Horus Heresy, that I truly love. I did not like the way they dealt with Gavril Loken's end, though, but I understand it. So
Very 40K.
yeah.
Graham, your favorite characters?
I don't really engage with the franchise at the character level. I don't really. I'm more interested in the sort of grand sweep of the
I mean
stories and
the Chaos Gods
and the
for me.
factions. If I was forced to choose characters, so I don't think I could choose five, but I would say the Emperor and Robot Girly Man, for similar reasons, because like the Imperium is not what either of them wanted, at all. It's all wrong. It's exactly the opposite of what the Emperor wanted. Nobody listened, and it's taken on a life of its own. And I identify with that so hard. And
Right.
and the sheer tiredness of the Emperor, I think I I identify with that as well. And other than that, Inquisitor, Obi-Wan, Sherlock Clouseau, I think, is another character who sticks out to me.
How the heck do you pronounce, what is it? Tzeentch? Changer of Ways? Does anybody know how that's pronounced?
Tzeentch.
Tzeentch.
Yeah, I think it's
Tzeentch. Okay.
It's,
Because I love that.
at least in the audiobooks, that's
I'm
what
Do they
always
have
embarrassed
stars
to
on their
talk about
bellies?
that character because it's like, how do you say that name? Stephen, your favorite characters?
Well, I think it's however you want to say it because he'd appreciate that.
Fair.
My favorite characters, I want to go with Kane. It's Kane. Let's be honest.
Just
Yeah.
no. Okay, awesome. Matthew, favorite characters?
Oh wait, no.
Oh, you have more. Sorry, Stephen.
Yeah, I was just sorry. It's just
Yeah.
Kane. I sorry about that. I really liked Eisen. I really like Eisenhorn. The
Was that the
Inquisitor.
first Eisenhorn reference of this discussion? I think so.
Yeah, I think it
Wow.
is. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm surprised, and I'm waiting with bated breath for the next Elizabeth Beckwin, the next Beckwin book. And then I like for Space Marines, I really like Mortarion. He's an interesting character. He's one of the only somewhat sane, kind of traitorous Primarchs, So
Sliding scale. Yeah.
Yeah. Relatively.
All right, Matthew, your favorite characters.
So my favorite character is Gabriel Loken. He's takes you through the first five novels, oh well, nearly, of the Horus Heresy. He has this incredible arc that goes throughout Heresy. He ends up getting stuck on Istavan and goes crazy and becoming Cerberus. Literally believes he's trapped in the underworld, fighting the denizens of Nurgle. Gets rescued, has this whole redemption arc, and fucking Dan Abnett massively shit the bed, didn't know what to do, fucked it up. But happens to the best of us, with how he ended that character up. But never mind, we move on. Yeah, again, as far as story, Angron as well, and he's just a fascinating character to read. He's very much kind of more the purity of the Primarch. He exists purely, I mean, mechanically forced to, mind you, but he's just corrupted in such a way that he just exists for it just to exist and to alleviate his pain. But then when you get these glimpses of clarity throughout when he appears, we'll have bits where the pain's taken away, and it's really tragically sad when that happens. Like one of the best books is Betrayer, or in my personal opinion anyway, about this. And you see a part where he finds the bones of his slave brothers and sisters who all died in a rebellion that he started because the emperor transported him from the battlefield right at a crucial moment to to find him as it was. And yeah, he sort of has this moment of clarity, and it's just I don't know. Yeah. That's pretty much it for the. Although, again, Caiaphas Cain is the Blackadder of 40K, so
Oh, that's
And
well put.
that's Sandy Mitchell literally wrote him as an Edmund Blackadder character. She mentions
Really?
that.
He even
Yeah,
has his own Baldric, so yeah.
yeah, yeah. She mentions that in one of the forwards she wrote to one of the anthologies for it.
There
And
there were so many things
yeah,
that were right in front of my face that now I see this
yeah.
conversation. It makes so much sense. All right, gents, thanks so much for being part of this men liking stuff. Thanks for joining us with your enthusiasm and your knowledge. Like I said, I learned a lot. So Grim, Matthew, Stephen, Jan Helge, thanks so much. I'll put your details of your projects in Helge and Grim in the description box of this video because I always butcher Grim's website post-mort.com. I always say
Yes.
slash, and that is wrong. Fourth time, finally got it. Okay, and Ismark the Mark Boy, I cannot say enough good about that book, Jan Helge. But again, links in the description box. Guys, thanks for joining us on this second Men Liking Stuff. You out there watching, please like and subscribe. And there will be another panel discussion about Warhammer 40K signing up because so many people wanted to do this that we had to do two panels. So, guys, thanks so much for participating.